Hello, everyone. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, and I'm chatting with Emmy nominee Anna Konkle, one of the stars, writers, and co-creators of Hulu's hilarious comedy, PEN15. Anna, this show's so successful at bringing people back into that middle school mindset. In retrospect, I think it was the worst time of my life. What made you and your co-creators, Maya Erskine and Sam Spiegelman, want to create a show about that was focused on this age?
I think it's a lot of the worst times in people's lives. And so that's partly why. At the time when we started, thinking of this idea, it was probably, I don't know, 8 years ago now. And that was part of the discussion. I mean, there was one aspect that Maya and I discovered that we loved playing characters that were rejects. And so this is a natural, time for, and especially being in our 30s, playing rejects felt even more rejecty. I mean, I'm playing 13-year-olds felt even more rejecty. But then there was the aspect of, looking at life at 13 years old, and at the time, it wasn't really something that people were talking about that much in mainstream media. It was the Nickelodeon version or the, whatever shiny, kid-like version. And the reality that we had lived was this really awkward, weird moment between childhood and teenhood where you're being confronted for the first time with adult-like feelings, whether that's emotionally R-rated stuff or physically R-rated stuff, and centering around girls was something that we hadn't seen and something that we felt was important to talk about. And we thought that the trauma and comedy, from that time frame was kind of untapped.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we've seen sort of a lot of high school versions, and maybe not even then are they R rated, sort of like PEN15 is. But that middle school aspect brings something different completely. Season one was really well received. You got an Emmy nomination for writing. Season two seems to have gained even more traction with viewers and critics alike, just falling in love with this show. How did you want the show and the characters of Anna and Maya to evolve in season two as they head into eighth grade?
Yeah, I think that we've struggled a little bit because going into the first season, we were very much underdogs and, was hearing from a lot of people, that, not to expect audiences or critics for that matter to like it or get it or whatever, but maybe we'd have like sort of a cult following and that would be plenty. And I think that going into season two with, knowing that we were like decently well received created a pressure that we hadn't felt before to, to not disappoint and reach expectations. And I'm the kind of person that I do very poorly under pressure. Clearly, I started the interview by knocking over a glass of water that I'm sure will get out, but yeah, it's just not my thing. And so that really intimidated me going into season two. But we kind of had mantras for ourselves of like, we need to love it. Everybody else can hate it. We need to keep trying to love it. And of course, there's a million things I watch where I'm like, I changed this or changed this. But I think we kept true to the goal. And we also, didn't shy away from subjects that we knew, because I'm 34, that as a 34-year-old, I was still interested in. Because I think after season one, it's like, okay, we talked a lot about being 13. I'm a 34-year-old woman. Like, can I stay creatively stimulated for another 15 episodes? And so kind of to continue to push ourselves creatively so that we stayed invested and loved it was really important.
And did you keep journals from that time in your life? Because there's things that are so specific of that era. I'm just curious, how much are you pulling from your own experiences, or is it just something you come up with in the writer's room?
So much of it is super, super autobiographical. I mean, I can't tell you how many scenes we go through and, we know in the outline or when we're breaking story on the board that like, this is the general vibe of this scene and this is what's going to happen. And then it comes down to getting it down. And a lot of times nothing feels better than like verbatim recalling what happened in that moment and getting it down, and then kind of shaping it afterwards so that it follows your arc or whatever. But weirdly, I don't know why this is, I don't have journals from the time. It's so fresh in my mind, and Maya's too. I think that I don't know, it was a traumatic time, and it was a traumatic time for both of us. And I wish I was better at repressing stuff. I'm not, it's all stays very fresh. And I've done a ton of therapy, and talking about the most traumatic time brings us back to 13. So it's all very, fresh, unfortunately. And I think too that it's a very vulnerable time. So if you allow yourself, it's probably closer to the surface than we all want to accept.
And there's a moment that's so brief, but I can never let it go. It's, to me, one of the funniest things of this show, because I kind of like things that aren't focused on, but happening in the background. And in the pool episode, Anna sees Maya, she's devastated from Brent's rejection, and you dive in the pool and then butterfly stroke over. What made you come up with that? And do you have a swimming background? Because I actually asked Sam about this, who directed it, and he was like, she got across so fast, I didn't think we would get the shot. And he said it was shocking how fast you swam the pool.
That's really funny. And also thank you for liking that moment, because it's not one that a lot of people would be like that. It was, I think I took swim lessons when I was younger. And it just, that something about that stroke is very funny, because it just takes so much effort, and to be like a long person and do that stroke and this movement is sort of horrifying. And it never felt graceful to me whenever I did it. I was never the first one in, finishing the lap. I was always last. So I don't know. I thought that it would be funny. And fortunately, Maya and Sam were down to do it. And, we almost missed that shot on the day because we had so much to do. And Sam had all these amazing oneers that he had planned. And so it's not a super important story beat. You know what I mean? We're like trying to get down to the skeleton of what has to be shot. And then we remembered and we got it the last minute. But yeah, I was sure people were going to be, giving me awkward looks after, like, why did you do that on TV? But instead, which is usually what I get after I do something, which I think is funny, but people were like, oh, you're really good at that. And that floored me. But I think, the underlying thing was like, Anna wants to save Maya and get to Maya as quickly as possible at all times. And that's her like most aggressive stroke. So she went for it.
It's so funny.
It's so nice.
Anna and Maya, they're sort of kind of reminding each other constantly how hot they are. And they're touching. A lot of your conversations are really in each other's face. Sometimes your noses are even touching. Was that intentional to sort of present them as codependent, or is that something that naturally just kind of came through when you were acting out the scenes?
I think it's both. I think that there's a codependence between our characters, and especially, Maya and I both related to being 13 and just not being able to get close enough to the person that is your rock. And I think there's an aspect too of, not fully knowing or trusting your own identity, and not fully liking or loving yourself. And so latching on to this person that you do think is the shit, and that you do think is the best in every way possible, and wanting to be them in a way. That's what I relate to with my best friends. And at that age, and I'm sure there's part of me still that I'm like, oh, you're just so cool. Can I be like you? But so that physicality was something sort of natural to 13-year-old codependence. And I think too that, there's just a clowning aspect of that. Like there's a clowning aspect of that being funny. How close can we get? And Maya, fortunately, is someone that's not afraid to, take risks and stuff. So it's just always fun to do weird shit with her.
And I know you guys sort of co-write everything, but one of the episodes credited to this season is bendy wiki, and it pulls Anna and Maya into a bit of witchcraft. They're trying to, I guess, stop people from picking on them and making the boys like them more. The kids spy on them as they're doing this dramatic chants. And how much improv do you bring into scenes like that? And how do you and Maya even get through things like that?
I really didn't. I was like ruined so many takes. She absolutely, I was just thinking about this the other day. She just destroyed me in that scene. You know, I think so the spell itself in the scene that we're doing is written, which is probably very weird because it's a weird spell, but the level that the where the acting went, and I have to say that was hugely led by Maya, and Sam's directing was, you know, the Crucible style, just like, you know, exorcism, right. Kind of hysterical, but also a little scary. Like the moment when Maya's like losing it and I start sucking in the devil from her mouth and then take on the devil. And I mean, that was totally just of the moment. And that was, I remember after it being like, that went too, like, we can't use any of that. That was too scary. This was supposed to be this kind of light moment in the arc in the midst of sort of a darker episode, and this was supposed to be levity, you know. And I was like, I'm scared, like we can't, like I truly felt like this was a horror movie. And I remember too, when we were doing the spell, the LA wind started whipping and the chime started chiming, and we heard an owl, I kid you not, in the middle of the day at a school. And that was weird, but it worked. You know, I think it's one of my favorite scenes in the season, actually. And for me, you know, Maya is the funniest ever in that scene.
And what was the inspiration between this psychic, bendy wiki?
Yeah, bendy wiki was a version of a real person on a business card that I found with my friend when I was probably in 4th grade. And we, you know, we need to get out of the house and find stuff to do. And we so often ended up playing in the woods. And we were opening people's mailboxes, which arrests me now. And there was a business card in one of them of a realtor. Not the name bendy wiki, I don't remember the name anymore, but we had been already talking about the fact that we thought we had powers. So we were like, this is a sign, this is Mother Witch, you know, and the most random stuff, you just take hold of it, which I think is really funny, especially when you're like a little too old to be doing that or believing that. And it kind of started as this fun thing that we were doing. And then it ended the day as we got more and more invested in our powers with like crying near a cranberry bog because I had told my friend's little sister that she could walk on water, because the cranberry bog went up and down with how much water it had. It looked pretty solid to me, and I was like, I've made this so you can walk on water. And then my friend was like, don't, that's my sister, her powers aren't real, like she's gonna die. And so it became this life and death thing. She didn't walk it, but I really liked the idea, and so did Sam and Maya, of bringing that, something that starts sort of light and to distract, to a deeply dramatic place, because as kids you can believe something so much, for good or for bad. And so it was nice to get to go through that again. Question mark.
Another episode I want to touch on briefly is opening night. It's the last episode of season 2, and at this point Maya and Anna had been feuding, but the show must go on, and Maya's starring in a play, and Anna's part of this tech crew, and really over the top in her direction. Were you in school theater, and did you have experience with someone like Anna on the tech crew?
Yes, definitely. So I feel like, you know, in non-professional theater, which is mostly all I did, the stage manager tends to have way too much on their plate. and they're doing 99 jobs, and they have to deal with all these annoying actors that are always yelling over them and needing attention. And, you know, so the stage manager so often gets the reputation of just being like, shut up, and, you know, overdoing it all the time. So yeah, I definitely was based on experience. I think that, you know, Maya went to a legit performing arts high school called Loxa in LA, which is like one of the best in the country. And so she had experience with, you know, just bigger productions and while being in school. And my drama experience was I did a ton of community theater, but it was like much more kind of broken down than what you saw on in our show. And so yeah, we all kind of put our heads together of what the trajectory would be. And, you know, just it was a good opportunity for Anna and Maya to, you know, not be at odds because there was a massive problem, but be at odds because their identities were shifting, and they shifted separately. And that's very much, you know, something that we could all relate to, of like, you know, thinking back to 13 and going like, what happened to that friend? Like, there wasn't a huge falling out, but something just ended. And, you know, season 2 is very much about identities. So letting us kind of, have an opportunity for Maya and Anna to have different identities that potentially could take them completely away from each other. And then fortunately they find each other again, and are both, they're a little more different than each other than they were before, but they still manage to find each other.
And Anna's parents are going through a divorce, and she has this contentious relationship with her mother, and she's really sort of having to choose sides between her parents. As for as funny as this series is, there's really a lot of heartfelt moments, especially I think in season 2. Like the last scene of you crying when Anna's dad says you have to decide who you want to live with. Was that something intentionally you wanted to bring more into season 2? Because it's still hilarious, but there is a little bit more drama in season 2.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, season 1, there are a lot of literal firsts, physical firsts, and season 2, I think, is more emotional firsts. And so you can kind of dig into the minutia of being 13. They might not be memories that you know, go like, oh, this is my first kiss, or this is the first time I masturbated, or this was the first time I felt, you know, like I was different from others, or whatever. These being like, this was the first time that I, you know, felt like I needed to choose between a parent, or that I was somehow responsible for keeping them together, or, you know, the list kind of goes on and on. But I think that lent itself to the whole season being a little bit more serious. I think with my parents' story, you know, we knew that we had touched on it season 1, and it felt like, how could we, you know, we ended season 1 with the announcement of the divorce. And usually in a show, and my experiences, you see, and then the next episode you see they're divorced and they're living separately, and da-da-da. So much of my experience was in the gray area and the trauma, really, of, you know, my parents lived together for 2 years after they decided they were getting divorced, just with the house split down the middle. So we wanted to touch on that a little bit, because it's also really funny and weird. But the aspect of not just the drama of them being apart, but what about the drama of, you know, moving out and moving your boxes, and, you know, looking for an apartment while you're still living together, and how that would affect Anna, and what are the little steps in a divorce that hurt. And one of them I remember, and a lot of, I think, kids of divorced parents relate to this, of like, who would you rather be with, you know? And that felt worth looking into, as well as the sort of reliance that her dad has on Anna, of like, and help me look for an apartment, you know, and help me. And Anna has spent so much time, both seasons, just trying to fix the family and be good enough and be perfect and play the French horn and do everything to make her parents good again, essentially. That I think that's sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back, of like, yeah, I'm moving out, and help me look for an apartment, and I know you want to live with me. And I think we'll see in the next season that has an emotional, takes an emotional toll on her that we think is important to look at.
And just one final question. Of course, you and Maya are in your 30s playing these teenagers, but your co-stars are teenagers.
Yeah.
Brady Allen plays Anna's ex-boyfriend, and I love the way he sort of rejects her and say he's not into her drama at the pool party. And all of these kids are so talented. What is it like working with these teenagers on set?
Mostly it's awesome. You don't have a lot of the kids and teens, it was their first professional jobs. So that's been really exciting of seeing really talented kids, do really great acting work, because although a lot of it centers on me and Maya, the things that we do give the cast are, it's not nothing. Like there's some weirder, deeper things going on, and to watch them do a great job is really exciting. And I think also, it's really informs us, and it's really helpful to see all the mannerisms that these teens and kids have of how they deal with their own, self-consciousness or whatever. And we get to kind of draw on that and emulate that, and they're all just awesome. Like the honestly, the biggest gift of it all is a lack of ego. It's really, our set is really different. I'm so grateful for that from most sets in LA that you walk into, where it's a bunch of adults that have done a lot and they want to let you know that and whatever, and there's just none of that. It's a bunch of human beings sharing their secrets and shame, and hoping that the kids that are acting it get it, and they do, because they shouldn't be underestimated. I think that's the lesson of our show too, is that 13-year-olds, they're well on their way to adulthood, whether we want them to be or not, and giving them sort of the room to be great actors and to do good work, it just allows them to do what they can do.
Well, Anna, congratulations on this series and all the acclaim it's been getting. It's well-deserved, and we wish you continued luck throughout this award season. I want to encourage our viewers here to click on the subscribe button if you want to see more interviews with awards contenders like Anna here, and head over to goldderby.com to make your awards predictions. Anna, thanks so much for chatting with Gold Derby about PEN15 today.
Thank you so much.